Okay, so in the other video there, I concluded Tikkun Chatzot. Unfortunately, the video got cut off, but that was the majority of Tikkun Chatzot, Tikkun Leah, and Tikkun Rachel, and then Tikkun Leah. And just a thing. So we're starting now the 3 weeks of mourning between the 17th of Tammuz and Tisha B'Av, the 9th of Av. And it starts with the, well, hold on a second. So the 17th of Tammuz, I'll just read this. This is actually, this comes out of Ma'am Loez, translated by Arya Kaplan. But this is taken out of that big, massive volume of commentary, and this is the story of Tisha B'Av. But at the beginning of this, it has a small section on the 17th of Tammuz, so I'll read this to you now. So our sages teach us that 5 things happened to our ancestors on the 17th of Tammuz, and 5 on Tisha B'Av. On the 17th of Tammuz, Shiva Basar B'Tammuz, the first tablets were broken. The Torah was given on the 6th of Sivan, and on the 7th of Sivan, Moses went on high to receive the tablets. He remained there 40 days, which ended on the 17th of Tammuz. Moses then descended, and when he saw that the Israelites had made the golden calf, he broke the tablets. So this should have been the day that we received. It appears like it should have been the day that we received the first luchot, the first tablets of the 10 Commandments. But it didn't happen that way. Idolatry got in the way. So that is the whole point of idolatry. It is in the way between you and Hashem. It is like a barrier between you and Hashem. Okay, so this is the day that Moshe broke the tablets. And I do want to point out that Moses went up on the mountain for 40 days, and then he came down, and then he went up on the mountain for another 40 days. If anybody knows what letter that the Torah Sheba'al Peh, the oral Torah, starts with, is a mem, which equals 40, and it ends with a mem, which equals 40. So, this was the day of the great catastrophe. The Atlantic Ocean rose so as to swamp the entire world. This is an interesting midrash here. Moses immediately took the golden calf, burned it, and ground it into powder. Moses then asked the sea, "Why do you wish to swamp the world?" "The world only exists because of the merit of Torah," replied the sea. "The Israelites have rebelled against the Torah." Moses replied, "I will give you everything that they made." He took the ashes of the golden calf and strewn them over the surface of the water. At that time, thousands of Israelites died, but the sea did not stop its raging. Moses then took some of this water, mixed with the ashes of the golden calf, and gave it to the Israelites to drink. Only then did the sea calm down. It was also decreed that the Israelites be subjugated to other nations and that they die. If the tablets had not been broken, no nation would ever have been able to gain power over the Israelites. The Israelites would also have become immortal. This alludes to when the Torah says, "The writing was the writing of God, engraved, or charut, on the tablets." Exodus 32:16. Our sages teach us, do not read charut, but cherut, which denotes freedom. It is as if the Torah had said, the writing was God's writing. There was freedom on the tablets. This indicates that if the tablets had not been broken, the Israelites would have been free from governmental power and also free from the angel of death, the Malach HaMavet. Other catastrophes also happened on the 17th of Tammuz. On that day, the Israelites had to stop bringing the daily sacrifice known as the Tamid. Every day, the Israelites would sacrifice 2 sheep, one in the morning, one in the late afternoon, according to Numbers 28, verses 3 and 4. One was to atone for any sins that the Israelites committed during the night, and the other was to atone for any sins that they committed during the day. The Israelites could then sleep without sin. So, offerings were made at all times, basically all the time, continual. That's what tamid means. It means continual, to atone for sins. When the enemy laid siege to Jerusalem, the Israelites still brought sacrifices, using the animals that were in the city. However, on the 17th of Tammuz, they had to stop bringing the tamid, because there were no more animals in Jerusalem that could be used for the sacrifice. It was impossible to go outside to sacrifice. It was impossible to go outside to obtain others. When the tamid was no longer offered, the enemy became strong and was able to destroy Jerusalem. The above occurred during the destruction of the first temple. A similar event happened during the second temple. There were two brothers, Hyrcanus and Aristobulus, who were royal princes. Before their father, the king, died, he gave orders that his wife take his place on the throne and that Hyrcanus became high priest. His wife indeed became queen in his place, and she appointed her son Hyrcanus as high priest. However, when the queen died, a dispute broke out between the two brothers regarding the throne. Hyrcanus won, but then some people made peace, and it was determined that Hyrcanus should remain high priest while Aristobulus would be the king. This agreement lasted for a short time until Hyrcanus changed his mind and began to fight for the throne. Many people were killed in the battle. When Hyrcanus saw that he could not win back the throne, he allied himself with the Roman emperor, who came with a great army and laid siege to Jerusalem. Aristobulus was inside, while Hyrcanus was outside with the Roman legions. Since there were no animals to sacrifice inside, every day the people in the city would lower a basket full of gold pieces over the wall, and in return 2 lambs were placed in the basket. This went on for a number of days. One day a wicked old man came by. He knew the Greek method of sign language, which consisted of secret signs that only a few people could understand. He sent a secret message to the Roman general that he should side with Hyrcanus. He told him that as long as the Israelites kept bringing the Tamid, the city could not be taken. The next day, people in the city lowered a basket of gold pieces, as they always did. But when they raised the basket, they found a pig had been placed in it. On that day, an earthquake near Jerusalem trembled for miles around. So it says in the Gemara that the hooves on the pig caught the wall, and it caused an earthquake. Trembled for miles around. Now that the Tamid was not brought, Jerusalem was given over to the hands of the enemy. The third tragedy that occurred on the 17th of Tammuz was that the walls of Jerusalem were broken and the enemy was able to enter. The fourth tragedy was that Apostamos burned the Torah. The fifth tragedy was that King Manasseh placed an idol in the Holy Temple. So those are the tragedies, the five classic tragedies that happened on the 17th of Tammuz. But in the future, the prophet says that the fast days will turn into festivals. So that is something we can absolutely look forward to. But in the meantime, we have a lot of work to do to rectify the reasons why the temple was destroyed and we've gone into exile. So the Baal Shem Tov, he teaches that forgetfulness leads to exile. Forgetfulness leads to exile, and remembrance leads to redemption, or remembrance leads to the Geula. So it is very important to be cognizant and remember. There are actually 6 mitzvot to remember constantly, all the time. And every day, every moment, every day that you remember these 6 mitzvot, it is to your merit. It is a fulfillment of a individual mitzvah for each one. They are to remember the day that you left Egypt, all the days of your life. To remember the day, which is Passover. To remember the day that you met your Lord your God at Sinai, which was Shavuot. To remember the Sabbath day, to keep it holy. Remember what happened to Miriam on the way when she spoke against Moshe and she got leprosy. To remember what Amalek did to you on the way, cutting down the weak ones trailing behind you when you were walking in the desert. And and the most important one that refers to this holiday is to remember what happened with the sin of the golden calf when we angered the Lord our God in the desert. So, forgetfulness leads to exile. Remembrance leads to redemption. We are taught that the temple was destroyed because of baseless hatred. So the way that we're going to rectify that is with baseless love. Baseless love. To love somebody without a reason. Baseless love. So the other thing, so this specific day commemorates the time that the walls of Jerusalem were breached. So it is interesting because if you look at the structure of the temple and the structure, the geography of the land, the layout of the land, you have Jerusalem is surrounded on three sides by natural boundaries that make it useful defensively. So you can think of this in the same way as, your life being defensive against the evil inclination. So there are basically like valleys on all sides. So the side that the enemies have breached come from the north. And it's interesting because the prophet says that evil breaks out from the north. But the north in Hebrew, Zaphon, also means hidden. So the weakness of the city is the north, which is, in other words, the hidden parts of life. It might be that the enemy, the evil inclination, something that is hidden from you. You don't understand your weakness, or it could be, it's not something that you're aware of. Just like you have unintentional sins, right? It's stuff that you're not aware of. But the other thing is, the reason why there's no valley there, and that's because the outside land is at the same level as the city. So it makes it in such a way that the enemies have been lifted up and they're at that same level. So it makes it difficult to defend. But it is interesting because on that side of the city, there is, I believe it's called the Jaffa Gate, which is the gate that dignitaries went through. So it is a large gate. So just like dignitaries, you think of expanding like the ego and expanding the pride and being big and boastful and everything. It requires this big gate. It's like this big opening. And the enemies don't go towards the walls that are like hard to penetrate. They go after the gates. The things that are in and out. Like, just remember Orachot Tzadikim, the paths of the righteous, the book that I have some chapters that I've gone through. So each chapter is called a sha'ar, a gate. And it's because those are the openings through which things can come in and out of your life, whether it's good or bad. And we can think of it in the same way, that there are midot, or character traits, that are actually very, very useful, and there are midot that are not very useful. And you need to keep those gates closed or guarded very well. And it is interesting if you read Tractate Tamid, which is typically you read the first parak after Tikkun Chatzot. But if you read Tractate Tamid at the beginning, it talks about the guards on watch on the temple. And what happens is they would go around. There would be a like the head of the guard that would go around to check to see if everybody was awake. And if you weren't awake, your clothes would get burned. They would burn you. They would startle you awake with fire. And that's not something you want. You want to be awake. And this is the time to be awake. So these 3 weeks are seen to be a time where you should be very awake in your life and be very cognizant of the things around you. You might call it hypercritical of the way you treat people, hypercritical of just the events in your life as well, to be very cognizant of the dangers that are in your life and to find ways to mitigate them. That actually Judaism teaches that very stringently, to mitigate dangerous situations, right? Just like, in industry, you say that safety is key, right? But so in life, danger needs to be mitigated. Just like you have a parapet on the roof of your house. So if you have a roof, you're supposed to have that. So those old houses, you actually see this more frequently, where the roofs of houses would have almost like a gate around the edges. And that's actually a Torah innovation to keep people safe if they're on the roofs of their house. But a long time ago, people actually, like, the roof of your house was like the last story that you could, walk on and everything, because it wasn't typical that people had the angled roofs that we have today. But anyway.